So the first one would be Failure's Fantastic Planet. This comes out in 1996. So there's three singles: Stuck on You, Pitiful, and Saturday Savior. There's 17 songs and it clocks
Yeah.
in at 68 minutes long. So this is like a full journey that you go through.
Yeah.
For our listeners that haven't heard this album, how would you describe the sound?
Failure is a band, and I'm stealing this quote, and I think I'm stealing it from James Black of Finger 11. Failure is a band where every chord is lower than you think it's going to be in pitch. Um, it's funny when you say that the singles were Stuck on You, Saturday Savior, and Pitiful. Obviously, Stuck on You is a fantastic song and one of my favorites. The Nurse Who Loved Me is probably the best song on the record in my mind. I think it's one of the greatest rock songs ever written. It gained more notoriety when someone else played it than when they played it. People who kind of go in those circles in the hard rock, alt rock circles will know it as a Perfect Circle
So
released a
that's
version of it.
so when I'm listening to the album, I
Yeah,
didn't even get to that song yet to listen to it. I'm just looking at the track list, and that's such a unique, The Nurse Who
yeah,
Loved Me
exactly.
is so unique that I go, wait, that's in A Perfect Circle song. And then obviously I know that this album's 96 and A Perfect Circle is the
Yeah,
2000s. So I always thought that that was in A Perfect Circle song until listening to this.
yeah, and it's great because Perfect Circle's interpretation of it is so different than the song that's on the record. And I recently kind of did like a deep dive, kind of rediscovering Failure, because I was a big fan when it came out, and I was a fan of the record before that, which is called Magnified, which is more of like a hard rock record, where Fantastic Planet is more of like a space rock odyssey. But discovering how they made that album basically on their own. They were signed to a record label called Metal Blade, which is also signed like bands like Cannibal Corpse and
Didn't they have
and
like the original Metallic album or something like way,
it
way
could be,
back
yeah,
in the
before
day?
they signed
Yeah.
to air the Elektra, they may have had the first Metallica record. But that album was just this record that just sounded different. And yeah, when you listen to Saturday Savior, it's the same way. Like everything is just so low, like not like just bassy, but like rich, and it's like all kind of baritone, and it's just such an incredible sounding record too. And to find out all these years later that they had essentially done it by themselves in a house they rented with like some like kind of like mid-level Mackie console that you could get at like Guitar Center, and they came out with this record that sounds so awesome. And I remember driving in my I had a K car when I was in high school and hearing Stuck on You on the radio, which had a very brief stint on rock radio in Canada. I was actually on CFNY at least once, and being like, what the hell is this? Like, where do I find this? Like, and then, going home and like turning on the wedge on Much Music and like, just recording VCR tapes worth of videos, hoping to catch a video of it, which I finally did after like, like 2 months of trying. And the video for Stuck on You is filmed entirely in silhouette. And it's basically, I'm not sure if you were ever tracked it down. It's basically an homage to all of the openings of the James Bond movies in the 70s, where they did the thing with the silhouettes would morph into other silhouettes. And it's such a cool video. It's one of the coolest videos I've seen by a rock band. And I'm proud and I'm happy to say that Failure actually got back together about 5 or 6 years ago, and they're making records again, and they're making really great albums. And one of the things they did was they went back and did a redux of that video, and he did like a 4K AI upscaling, and you can watch a high def version of that video. And he also has a really great, Ken Andrews has a really great sort of tutorial series on YouTube, because since Failure, he's become like a world famous record producer, working with bands like Tenacious D and mixing records. And there's a great like 20-minute video on how they were able to make that Failure music video and everything it took to do it. And it's awesome. It's really great. There's another song at the end of the album, which is the album starts and ends with sort of the same kind of interlude.
The chime.
And, yeah, the chimes and the clock being wound. The last, I think it's the last song on the record, is a song called Daylight, which is kind of, it's in the same vein as The Nurse Who Loved Me, where there's just a moment in the song where everything is so loud and so chaotic. You're not sure if it's possible that it can get any louder or any wilder. And, you know, like, I always find myself, you know, listening to that record, if you listen to it with your eyes closed and you get to, you know, the climax of The Nurse Who Loved Me, you know, and it's just everything's on 10 and it's so loud, but it's also so deliberate, you know. The drums are just doing this quarter note figure, you know, that's deadly in time. And Kelly Scott, the drummer from Failure, probably doesn't get enough credit, because I'm sure it's probably way harder to play that slow than it is to play fast. And it's so powerful. And, you know, if you listen to it with your eyes closed, you find yourself sort of like clenching your fists, waiting for this moment, for this apex. And every time you think it's there, it just kind of goes one little step higher and higher and higher and higher. And then, you know, you get to this swirling chaos, and then everything stops. And it goes all the way back down to just Ken Andrews' voice and acoustic guitar. And then the song ends. And it's like, wow, what a release, man. And I think that's all I have to say. You could do a 2-hour deep dive with me just on that one album, man.
Well, let's keep going with this album. What really impressed me was the amount of ideas that they had on this album, and somehow they pulled everything off as one cohesive project. So there's the whole like space theme to it between the cover of the album. There's like really spacey production sounds, the lyrics. It's wild how there's so many just ideas floating around and different sounds, and it all works. They stick the landing, which is hard to believe.
Well, it's amazing to think that, you know, like the song Smoking Umbrellas, which is kind of in the middle of the record, which is kind of mid-tempo-y and got this cool drum thing going on, is on the same record as Saturday Savior and Stuck on You. And, you know, all these songs are really great, and they all have a thread that keeps them cohesive as an entire vision, but they're all different.
And man, I find the bass playing is very unique on some of the songs, like Smoking Umbrella. Like, and I love the sound of the bass. So some of the songs like Saturday Savior, Sergeant Politeness, they have really crisp, clean bass that I love. And then some of the later songs have like really distorted. There's an effect on it. And I just love everything the bass player is doing here.
Yeah. Greg, at least it's Greg Edwards and Ken Andrews are sort of the creative force behind the band at the time, and they traded off, you know, who played what when they were recording the record. But yeah, he does a lot of really cool chord-based stuff. I think he's playing an Ibanez with a humbucker in it, but it's just such a cool sound. Like, they're just a cool sounding band and unique. You know, nobody really sounds like them.
There's 3 different segues. So it's actual like songs. There's 3 different segues on the album.
Yes.
What do you think the purpose is of these segues?
You know, I don't really know. I mean, for me, it's when I listen to that record front to back, it's a good chance to kind of catch your breath and sort of like cleanse your palate. It's really neat because on their latest record, which they just put out last year, this first one I think has segue 1, 2, and 3 or something like that. The latest record has like segue 7, 8, and 9 or something. So they kind of went back to that idea on their latest record. But yeah, I definitely, for me, gives me a chance to sort of like collect your thoughts and go like, okay, what are they going to do next? Which I think is genius.
Yeah, my understanding for bands that do that, so someone like Tool that has a lot of like interludes and instrumentals and segues and all that, bands like Tool, they use it for a few reasons. So one you already mentioned is like to cleanse your palate in between, say something like really heavy and it's like, oh, where do we go from here? And it's like a palate cleanser. The other 2 reasons are sometimes 2 songs don't really flow one into the next very well. So this instrumental in between is like a good flow sonically between the two songs that should be backed up sequencing. And the other one is also for a certain feeling or a certain mood. So just adding like 1 minute of, I don't know, creepy sounds just adds to the overall painting that they're trying to paint. So that's my understanding of the segues.
Sounds good.
So there's a song called Pillowhead. And what's cool is there's actually a New York band called Pillowhead that got their name from that song.
Oh, awesome.
So that, what else? I got just a couple more things. So yeah, the album was actually produced by the band itself, which you don't always see. And you mentioned that maybe that added to, maybe that gave them confidence in being able to be so creative with this album, is that it's just them doing what they want and they don't necessarily have like a label guy that's telling them it has to be more commercial.
So. You know, coming from personal experience, when, you know, we got to make 2 records as Idle Sons, one that never came out on Atlantic and one that did come out on EMI. And yeah, there's definitely the role of a producer can definitely vary, you know. On the first record, our producer had a very, very strong kind of sway over us as far as, you know, do this, do that. I think you should do this, you should do that. And on the second record, which we made with Garth, he was sort of more like, well, I could make my own record whenever I want. Let's make your record. I'm just going to rein you in and make sure that you're not getting too far out into the weeds here. And you can definitely tell on the Failure album that, you know, the kids were given the keys to the candy store and just, you know, told, you know, they were just allowed to go out and make their record, which I think is awesome.
So as we wrap up with this album and we dive into the next one, I have some positive reviews that came out around the time of the album that I thought you would enjoy. So the Daily Utah Chronicle said, Failure separates themselves from the guitar-buzzed masses by balancing thick riffs with intricate arrangements and intelligent lyrics. They highlight the album's final 2 tracks, Heliotropic and Daylight, that you talked about, as its crowning achievement, writing that the songs are 2 manipulated masterpieces with tribal drums, treated guitars, spacey synthesizers, and dubbed vocals. It sounds like a mess when broken down, but flows weightlessly and gracefully in and out of the listener's mind. And then a couple other things. Sound Lab said the album was an impressively focused affair, with each track fitting perfectly into an overarching story of addiction-fueled disassociation. And the last thing is Just Press Play named Fantastic Planet the 3rd best album of the 90s, and Decibel Magazine included Fantastic Planet in their Hall of Fame, naming it a cult classic and an album that paints its heaviness in a gorgeous way. So I thought you would enjoy all of those as a fan of that album.
Yeah, I do. I really do.